Welcome to Wiseguy Confidential, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. On this, the 245th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. Shout out to the United States Marine Corps. Today's show is about election 2020 and our country under siege. This show is dedicated to the postal carriers, the poll workers who worked and are still working around the clock in order to ensure that every vote gets counted and to protect our democracy. On a personal note, this show is also dedicated to my mother, who from a very young age instilled patriotism in me. And when I was a kid, took me with her to vote every time she went to vote. And she voted in every election up until her death a few years ago. We're going through a very trying time since the election last week. Unless you've been living in a cave, you know that as of Saturday, President-elect and Vice President-elect Biden and Harris won a resounding victory and had received the most votes of any ticket in the history of these United States. At present, they've received 75 million, and those votes are still being counted. It is estimated by the time all the votes are counted, they will have defeated the current president by close to 6 million votes. A clear and powerful repudiation on the current administration. Their handling of the global pandemic, which is the worst of our lifetime, the vitriol, the divisiveness, and racism, and hate-mongering that has been a staple of the current administration's governing over our country. There's been a rejection by the vast majority of Americans of Trump and his disregard for the law and his disregard for the Constitution. What has happened since last week, when it was clear that Biden and Harris had defeated Trump and Pence, what you have seen is a continuation of the less than statesman behavior of a demagogue. Since that time, what he has done is had a nonstop temper tantrum on Twitter, has slandered the good name and goodwill of thousands of hardworking Americans, both supporters of him and Democrats, poll workers, civil servants, and law enforcement, questioning their integrity, their fitness, and their truthfulness in handling the votes and counting them in an accurate way. As many of you know, in some states, not only was there transparency in people from both parties watching over the votes being counted, they were live streaming the count, which has never been done before as far as I know. Live streaming up until right now, every single vote being counted. So that's very transparent. But of course, true to form, what we saw is, and what we've heard, is nonstop whining about being beaten, and for no other reason to blame it on votes being manipulated, saying that votes have been thrown away, saying that votes are not being counted correctly. Now, this is a matter of losing in several states, not just in Democratic-controlled states. Pennsylvania has a Republican legislature. They are controlled by and large by the Republican Party. The way that they're counting the votes was determined by the Republican Party in the state legislature. Same thing goes for Arizona. Same thing goes for Georgia. Now, we're not talking about a few hundred votes like was the case in Bush versus Gore. We're talking about losing by millions of votes. 5 million plus votes equals, which is what Trump is losing by and is going to lose by, equals the population of Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and the state of Wyoming. That's not nothing. That's huge. Now, people, I had on some of my posts, I had some loved one response to Trump and his allegations. The comment that they left was freedom of speech. Well, freedom of speech, while it's great, it is not absolute. Freedom of speech does not cover and not allowed legally. We cannot run into a theater and yell fire. You can't slander people and call people liars and saying that the hardworking civil servants that they're dishonest. You can't say those things without repercussions. And you can't make terrorist threats. And those things are being done right now by Trump sycophants, which is disgusting. Now, Trump and his wild allegations that are baseless and have been proven to have not been based in fact at all and has no evidence of any fraud or any wrongdoing, he is stirring it up and whipping his sycophants into a frenzy, having these people believe that his presidency is being taken away from him. And these people are responding by going to polling locations and going to vote count centers and threatening the workers, following them home, taking pictures of their license plates, threatening them with violence. So Trump is not only putting the workers at risk, he's putting the law enforcement at risk. This is the same man who's talking about law and order. There's no law and order when you are stirring people up in order to get them to be violent, to riot, to go stalk people who are just doing their job. And mind you, the people who are working are not only Democrats, they're Democrats and Republicans. So when he's putting these people's lives at risk, these are our people, these are your friends, your family, your relatives, your neighbors. This could be your mother or your father or another family member. Now, this is important and noteworthy because Trump, the last month or so, when it was revealed that Trump had lied and knew about the pandemic and the severity of the pandemic, well before he ever mentioned it to we, the American people, who are his bosses, and when he was asked why he didn't tell the truth, he said because he didn't want to scare the people. He didn't want to. Well, remind you, when he was running for president in 2008, he made it an argument that people needed to vote for him to keep the Mexicans out, the rapists, the murderers, the drug dealers. Those are his words. In this campaign, more recently, he went about talking about trying to keep thugs and essentially talking about minorities out of suburban areas. So again, scaring his partisans. So here he comes. Now that he's lost the election, and what is he using? Fear. Again, fear. Oh, the country's being taken away. The vote is a fraud. Be afraid, be very afraid. Stirring everybody up. Not only his partisans, but people who didn't vote for him, people like myself, are now starting to wonder, is he going to need to be forcibly removed from the White House? Are the Secret Service going to have to arrest him? Is there going to be a chance to transition peacefully? You have thousands of people who need to find homes, who need to be interviewed for jobs. It's a huge transition that needs to occur. You just don't transition from one day to the next. He is morally, ethically, and professionally obligated to allow for a smooth transition. Our country is currently suffering from the worst pandemic of any of our lifetime. At present, as in for many years, there are missiles pointed at the United States from Russia, from China. We have adversaries all over the world who are laughing at our country right now, seeing this infighting. As the saying goes, a house divided against itself cannot stand. This is completely unacceptable because this is a one person putting their selfish desires and their unwillingness to accept defeat over an entire country, a country that has existed for over 200 years. So that is completely unpatriotic. This is only more evidence that he does not care about anybody but himself. What did he do on the day it was announced that he was mathematically out of reach of being reelected? He's playing golf, like he always does. Playing golf. It's costing us millions of dollars, by the way. He's enriched himself over $500 million just on spending time on his own golf courses and traveling to his own resorts. So he has more than 70 days left in the position of president, but instead of dealing with the pandemic, assisting in the transition for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris to be able to do their job and assume their job well for the interest of we the people, not for their sake. And mind you, he can still go back and if for some miracle were to happen and it turned out that he won, he could just stay in office. His cooperation is deplorable. When he was given the keys to the White House, so to speak, it has been stated by people on both the left and the right that President Obama left the presidency in the best condition with the most preparation and guidance of any administration prior to Trump taking office. But now, in the middle of the pandemic, when we need the most smooth transition, he's doing everything possible to create more chaos. And again, he has his sycophants in a mad frenzy and talking about exacting violence on innocent people. The pandemic being under control, proof positive that he doesn't give a damn about anybody but himself. There's over 120,000 people contracting COVID every day in our country. Over 1,200 dying every day now of COVID in our country. The virus doesn't give a damn if you're Republican or if you're a Democrat or if you're independent. The virus is going to go where the virus wants to go. Remember, we are not in a conventional war, but we are in a war maybe in some ways worse. Right now we have lost more lives in the United States, over 250,000, more than the World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War all put together. So we're in a crisis, and we're not in a time to be playing games. And here you have a president who literally doesn't give a damn Because people of all political persuasions mingle every day. Most of us have a friend who voted for Trump, or a family member. When you're in the market, when you're in a store, or when you're out and about conducting whatever business you need to conduct, you're going to interact with people who vote differently than you. And the virus spreads how it's going to spread. So please pay attention to these words, if nothing else. Trump is proving it doesn't care, because he knows as well as anybody else the virus is going to transfer and is going to kill people who voted for him. Many people who voted for him. Hundreds of thousands of people have already died. Statistically, it is a certainty that at least 90,000 of those people were his supporters. So keep that in mind. There's no argument and there's no excusing what he's doing. Now, when he took office, like many of you, I prayed. Sure, I was angry about it, but I prayed, and I wanted for him to be successful in hopes that my business would be successful and that we would all thrive. Instead, he put us in a great recession. People have lost their businesses and their jobs more than any other president in modern history. And remember, he created this disaster. He created this outbreak of the pandemic by lying and not taking control of the situation. That said, I want to impress upon you the importance of reaching out to your Congress member and your senators. Ask them to implore the president to cooperate with the transition process and prepare to step down January 20th. Our country, our security are at risk. He just fired the defense secretary. It's rumored that he wants to fire the CIA director and the FBI director. Why? Because he blames them that he lost the election. It can't be because he totally mishandled the pandemic. It can't be because he caused all of our lives to be completely changed for the last almost a year. It can't be because our economy is in the tank and millions of people have lost their jobs because of his foolishness and his unprofessionalism. That can't be the reason. He has to blame it on somebody else. And that's unacceptable. So, as I always say, I'm not always going to tell you what you want to hear, but I'm always going to tell you the way it is. Follow us on YouTube, Wiseguy Confidential, and as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Need your support, guys. God bless, stay safe, avoid the COVID.